Hello, let me again welcome everyone to our workshop on supporting sustainable food systems. I'm Henry Goldschmidt and the Director of Programs at the Interfaith Center of New York. The goal of the workshop is to, well, actually, let me turn this over right away to our presenters, our panelists for the workshop. And they can tell you, I think, much more articulately than I can what the goal of the conversation is. So let me just first just introduce Alec Chi from East New York Farms, and Iyeshima Harris from Green Guerrillas. And again, I'm not going to recite all of their bios, but I'm going to put another link in the chat right now to the page on the Interfaith Center's website with all of our speakers' bios if you want to learn a little more about Alec and Iyeshima. And then let me just turn it over to you guys to introduce yourselves and your organizations and the focus of our conversation.
Hi, my name is Alec Chi. My pronouns are he, him. I am the community gardens organizer at East New York Farms. Yeah, and we're here to talk about our work in food justice in our communities and to talk about how we can all support a sustainable food system.
Hi, everyone. I'm Iyeshima Harris-Ouedraogo, and I am the Director of Programs at Green Guerrillas. I also wear a policy manager hat as well for a different organization. So I'll be talking about a lot of policy stuff that's going on in urban agriculture, as well as youth development work.
And then also I've shared a Jamboard. I think I'm sharing the screen now, so feel free to answer the questions. What does a sustainable food system look like to you? And I think on the next page, there's another prompt. What are examples of food justice or injustice that you see in your communities?
And just for folks who may not, excuse me, be familiar with the Jamboard platform, if you just, Alec put a link in the chat a moment ago. Oh, there's the link again. So if you click on that link, it should take you to your browser, and everyone should be able to, enter their responses to the prompts on the board, and then it should show up for everyone else to see. That's the plan.
Yeah, just to dig a little bit further, if you haven't used Jamboard before, right below that mouse with a circle is a sticky note. You could click on the sticky note. You could write your response and click on save, and then your response would automatically be on the board itself. If you don't want to use a sticky note, they also have a text box that's like 3 places below the sticky note. Yes, you could either type in the text directly and we'll be able to see your response. And we'll just give another 5 minutes for us to do that, and then we'll lead into our presentation. Hi, everyone. Once again, my name is Iyeshima Harris-Ouedraogo, and I am the Director of Programs at Green Guerrillas. So I want to briefly share with you what is Green Guerrillas, the work that we do, and why our work stems around food justice. And food justice is generally providing access to affordable, healthy food to the community wherever you are, and to those especially who don't have access to that healthier option. So briefly, Green Guerrillas, our work stems around using advocacy and organizing within New York City, community gardeners, youth in general, to address issues that are critical to our future and future of food justice and urban agriculture in New York City. So our organization has been around for 50 years. How our work really from the beginning stemmed in food justice and the preservation of land and land access to community members in the form of community gardens. So when our organization was founded, our founders literally started going into empty lots and start planting a lot of wildflower seeds and sunflowers in order for the community to be beautified and for the community members to feel appreciative for the communities that they're in. So seed bombing was a way in which we were able to turn those empty lots into beautiful spaces. And since then, we have inspired a lot of organizations, even the city, to start or having a more structure or formal structure around community gardens, because community gardens in New York City wasn't a thing in the before like 1970s. And I know like a lot of cities or states had community gardens, and there were like different forms and terms for community gardens back then. But the city didn't really have a plan for that. And community gardens started to flourish because of a lot of abandoned lots and white flight that took place during those times. And our organization really inspired the city to step up and preserve a lot of those spaces so that communities could flourish in various ways. So the work that we do really stems around youth empowerment, community gardeners, and advocacy, like I mentioned before, and I'll dig a little bit deeper what that looks like. So our youth empowerment work really stems around environmental stewardship. So we believe in empowering the next generation of environmental leaders to make sure that our earth is preserved in the best way possible, and to also implement environmental technologies in community gardens so that they are viable. So a lot of community gardens don't have power, don't have running water. So we tend to go around and install solar panels to help them with that. We also work along with the New York City government to implement running water in community gardens. Right now, a lot of community gardens, they have to use a hydrant to water their plants. So a lot of gardeners have to get like these heavy hoses that are like 50 feet long or 100 feet long, put them together, either run them across the street or on their block to bring water to their community gardens. Or some community gardeners will have like a water catchment system where they harvest rainwater to water their gardens. Those are great environmental, sustainable ways. However, it's not viable for the long run, especially when you don't get a lot of rain. Then you have to rely on having those fire hydrants. So we try to make sure that we're training our youth, our community gardeners to use the land and to think about sustainable ways moving forward that they could use within their community gardens. And also like to foster and encourage our youth interns to think sustainable as well throughout our programs. Community resilience is also something that we foster within our program or within our organization. A lot of times we find that a lot of young people, they are scared of trying new things or seeing new things or even exploring new things. So we really push their boundaries. So we tend to take them to camping trips, like right here, a couple of our youth interns, they've never seen mushroom grown in the wild before. So they find it cool. It's trying to figure out what form of mushroom they are and like how to use it, and just like touching them and feeling them is something that they value. And it's really important for us to bring those life-changing opportunities to our youth. Also within our community gardens group within themselves, we lost a lot of seed saving or the history of seed saving and how to seed save. So we try to make sure that our community members are bringing back foster knowledge, bringing back their learned experience or lived experience back to the program, while also pushing the boundaries to try something new. And that could benefit our environment. Then we want to talk about advocacy and outreach. So a lot of our work that we do stems around advocacy. In order for us to get funding, to maintain our programs, advocacy is a part of it. It's hard to say that, oh, we need more funding, but not be advocates. In order for you to gain access to those funds, you have to be able to share the purpose and the reason why and the lived experience that you're facing and the hindrance that you're going through in order to gain those access. So Our youth interns also go through advocacy training, and being able to speak to the public about the issues that community gardens face, and the reason why having additional support from the public or within our sector is important to advance our issues and to also address those issues in a more cohesive way. Here in the image, you see them sharing a farm bill platform, which the farm bill is something that's super important and super necessary. It was postponed this year, and this bill happens every 5 years, like it's being voted on and being restructured every 5 years. And we almost went through a government shutdown this year because of the farm bill, and the government had to do an extension in order to avoid that from happening. So we try to make sure that our youth interns are very well versed on the farm bill because it affects and impacts their work and our work when it comes to community gardens and environmental protection and our food system. So advocacy is definitely at the center of the work that we do, and also local to New York City. A lot of times community garden spaces that are not protected by city government is also at risk of being sold off or being redeveloped or developed on. So advocating around land access, land rights, and land sovereignty is key, and protecting that for years to come. We also have 2 youth programs. One of them is called the Youth Empowerment Pipeline Program, which is a 7 to 9 month youth internship paid opportunity that's available to youth across New York City. And that's more geared towards youth that are between 17 to 21 years old. So youth that are phasing out of high school, going into college, for them to be involved in hands-on learning at community garden spaces. Also a summer youth internship program where youth could work with us for 6 weeks in the summer, paid internship opportunity. They're doing similar work as well, going out to community gardens, learning, being one with earth, with the soil, and also growing foods for their community and trying new things as well. So hands-on learning is really key and important for the work that we do in food justice. In order for you to be able to talk about something, you have to be able to know it and touch it and feel it and experience it. So being that having these youth internship opportunities are vital for a program, because we're not only raising advocates that show up and speak to the issue, but advocates that are living the issue as well. I think that's everything. And yeah, so this is the entire focus of Green Guerrillas. These were some of our youth interns from the summer. We went to our camping trip. And as our slogan always says, it's like, it's our city or your city. So we have to dig it and maintain it and foster it, nourish it as much as possible. And these small moments that we create, these opportunities that we're creating and fostering in food justice is important and viable for the work that we're doing. And as I've learned throughout my journey, the younger we start, the better our future will be, because we're developing leaders of care and leaders that will foster and hopefully could make change happen. And looking forward to answer any questions that you might have, because we're going to be having a lot of discussion later on.
Thank you, Iyeshima. And I'd say it's a powerful illustration of this sort of whole food systems approach. Like, it's amazing to see all the different aspects of life in the city that you have to touch on to create sustainable systems. Everything from like fire hydrants to mushrooms. It's fantastic. Thank you. Alec, I turn to you.
Hi, yes. Thank you, Iyeshima. Iyeshima and I used to work together. She used to be the project director at East New York Farm, so it's great to be able to do this workshop together. Let's see. Okay. Can everybody see the screen? Okay. Hi, my name is Alec. I'm the Community Gardens Organizer at East New York Farms. So I'll kind of go over the history of East New York Farms and then all the programs that we do. Yes, okay. Okay, so our mission is to organize youth and adults to address food justice in our community by promoting local sustainable agriculture and community-led economic development. And we have been working with youth, gardeners, farmers, and entrepreneurs to build a more just and sustainable community since 1998. But 1998 is just when like we were incorporated as like a nonprofit. A lot of the work that we're doing is just a continuation of the efforts of the local residents and community members like decades before. So to give you an idea of where East New York is, we are in Brooklyn, and we are at our farm itself. You can access it from the 3 train. This is the second to last stop off the 3 train, Van Cyclin Ave. And it incorporates a few different neighborhoods like Cypress Hills, City Line, New Lots, Spring Creek, and Start City. Our farm is located in New Lots. But this is just the area that we serve mostly. Okay, so to do some history, in the 1950s, the community of East New York was primarily white. 98% was a mix of recent immigrants, including Jewish and Italian populations. It was a very segregated community. Buildings and developments such as NYCHA and schools were built for white people at the time. In 1954, United Community Centers was formed by the tenants in the Linden and Boulevard housing projects with a mission to provide first-rate services to fill in the gaps and meet the needs of families, and to involve adult and youth residents in social efforts to learn about and resolve community problems. In 1956, the George Gershwin Middle School opens to accommodate the expanding, mostly white population of the Boulevard and Linden houses, as well as the mostly Black students from the closing PS 109 in Brownsville. And this creates one of the more integrated schools in East New York at the time. And then in the 1960s, it leads to a legacy of vacant lots. So the demographic slowly begins to change. 92% is white and 88% is non-white. Discriminatory housing practices and policies, blockbusting leads to white flight and eventually planned shrinkage. And the intentional divestment of essential public services like libraries, fire departments, and public transportation. This led to many abandoned properties, and they were set on fire by landlords to collect insurance money. And the community of East New York is largely ignored by the city government. And the white population declines over time as they're able to receive loans, accumulate wealth, and leave the neighborhood. By the 70s, the white population declines. I don't need to go into all the stats. Okay, so by 1978, that's when New York City's Green Thumb program is started as a response to the abandonment of public and private land and the the program grants licenses for volunteers to use vacant lots as community gardens. Then in the 1990s, East New York is labeled as the killing fields, the murder capital of New York City, by the criminalization of petty crimes and drugs by Giuliani. Social problems include the highest murder rate in New York City. 33% of the neighborhood population is living below poverty level. Unemployment rate of 16% with 49% of residents 16 and over not in labor force. There's a low ratio of open space to inhabitants and less than a third of students performing at or above grade level in English and math. One of the worst performances in any Brooklyn neighborhood. In terms of physical health, East New Yorkers are more likely to suffer from nutrition-related illnesses and suffer from earlier deaths from heart disease than any other Brooklynites and New York residents. And have the highest rate of reported diabetes between 12 to 15%, and are 30, yeah. So furthermore, there are only 3 small supermarkets located in the central area of East New York at the time, making it one of the largest untapped markets in the central part of East New York. So all of this comes to a head in 1995 when the Pratt Institute Center for Community and Environmental Development They surveyed the community. It found that individuals had a long history of supporting community gardens in the neighborhood, working to promote environmental justice and supporting sustainable neighborhood economic and social development. So East New York Farms began in 1995 over a course of 2 years when PICCED initiated a participatory planning process where community residents identified the community's natural and human resources. This initiative was started by a man named Perry Winston, who's very interested in building communities that made sense. He's a professor and architect by profession and also committed to moving historically, systematically underfunded and to serve low-income minority communities like East New York and to find ways to solve their issues as a community. And identified and chose East New York to facilitate that process. It was a combination of applied academia with hands-on work. After 2 years of community conversations, they were able to identify what the community needed regarding assets and deficits. So over the assets that East New York had that the community identified was over 60 community gardens, more than any other neighborhood in New York City. A large population of dedicated community gardeners with the knowledge of agriculture. A lot of people are immigrants from the South and the Caribbean. And they began stewarding the land to grow food and meet their community needs. And also had one of the largest concentrations of youth in New York City, roughly 1/3 of the population. And the deficits was that there are few bodegas that sold produce that was not fresh. It was often rotten and expensive. There were a lot of negative health conditions and outcomes, and then a lack of after-school programming for the large youth population. The idea of growing food together came alive under nonprofit supervision and community groups, and United Community Centers was part of the planning committee as a result of conversations between East New York local development, community members, and Cornell Extension. And so in 1998, this was the first market. It just featured produce and items that were sold by local community gardeners. And then as you can see this in this photo, it's just a wooden table on top of 2 chairs. So very humble beginnings. And then in 2000, that's when they broke ground for the East New York Youth Farm. It's a half-acre farm. And here it is last year in 2022. It's a beautiful space. And so the East New York Youth Farm is a half-acre vegetable farm operated by our youth, staff, and the community. The produce is given to food distributions and to our farmers markets. And then we have composting on site. We operate 2 half-acre farms and then 1 learning garden and then 1 community garden. So this is our second half-acre farm. It's in the NYCHA Pink Houses development. It's a raised bed vegetable farm. It's operated by youth, staff, and residents, and the produce grown all gets distributed to the local residents. And we also have composting on site as well. This is Fresh Farm. It is a raised bed vegetable farm. It's run by community gardeners, and portion of the produce gets sold to our share table, which I will explain in a second. This is our newest Spring Creek Learning Garden in the Spring Creek area. The aim is to use it as an educational space for the local elementary schools in Spring Creek. Okay, and so our East New York Farmers Market. We hold farmers markets every Saturday right outside our youth farm. And we also have weekday markets on Thursdays outside the Brooklyn Food Stamp Center. And our markets feature local businesses, vendors, and farmers. We offer many incentives to earn health bucks, which are $2 vouchers, so you can purchase fresh produce at the market. For every $2 in EBT that you spend, you get 2 free bucks to buy produce. We accept different kinds of currency, debit, credit, cash, FMNP with EBT and health bucks, trying to make it as accessible as possible. And this is a picture of our share table gardener. So the share table is where if you're not able to set up your own tent and table to sell your produce, you can drop off your produce with us the day before and we sell it for you at the market and you keep 90% of the sales. So this is just a photo of some of the share table gardeners who have been working with us and our youth interns that log and keep track of all the sales and the receipts. Yeah, so the share table features organic produce grown in East New York and provides opportunities for gardeners to sell their produce, and they keep 90% of the sales. And we also are trying to, like, we are the largest youth-run farmers market in the country. So just trying to brag about that. And we're very proud about that. Okay, and then we also have a compost program. We take organic waste from the community to turn into compost, a natural fertilizer for the soil. It promotes growth, resistance to pest and disease, and produces more flavorful and nutrient-dense foods. We work with the community to divert food scraps from landfills and to build resilient soil in East New York, trying to create a closed system here through our food scrap drop-off sites. So we set up collection sites at community gardens to collect food scraps from the neighborhood, and then we haul it to our composting site to process it. Once we turn that into finished compost, we hold distributions to give that back to the community. And then we also host community workshop. These are free programs for community by community to share knowledge, skills, and culture around cooking, nutrition, indigenous farming practices, health and wellness, herbal remedies, and arts and crafts. And we also hold a series of distributions like supplies. So we give away seeds and seedlings at the beginning of the growing season. And then later we'll give away trellising materials as well as garlic bulbs for planting and cover crop seeds to have regenerative soil farming practices. And then we also have our mini grant program. So this program is an opportunity for local residents to apply for projects that will increase healthy food access in East New York. So we funded like teachers, schools, local organizations, and community gardens. And all of these programs, every single one cannot be done without our youth interns. So these are high school students that either go to school or live in East New York. We pay them and hire them and train them to work on our farms, run the farmers markets, do our garden assistance programs, which is where we connect our young people with the adults in the community to form those intergenerational connections, to support in their community gardens with the growing food. And they also help us hold the workshops, do outreach in the community, and hold our community events. That was a lot, so I'd be happy to answer any other questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Alec. Yeah, I mean, it is, again, the same with Iyeshima's presentation. It is a lot, but it just speaks to the breadth of this idea of a food system. You know, it's like almost every part of city life is connected in some way to the food system. And I appreciate that you guys are working on these issues from so many different angles. I think we have about 18-20 minutes left in the workshop. So I just wanted, I think, right away to sort of throw it open for questions for Alec or Iyeshima about their organizations and their work. And then I hope in a little while, maybe we can all take a look at the Jamboards together and see what people shared there. But if folks have questions or comments for Alec or Iyeshima, or doesn't have to be a question per se, if there's ways that, you know, your organization's work resonates with theirs, we'd love to have you share that. Gail, I think thought I saw a hand up.
Yeah, I just love what both of you are doing. Thank you so much for sharing. My question is, do you ever find, or have you had any creative ideas around people who may not feel confident around using fresh produce? Like, it's amazing that you're growing and, you know, the market is growing and you're able to reach more people and grow more food, it sounds like. I've worked in the food board for a long time. I used to work for the Corbin Hill Food Project. I don't know if you know them, but one of the problems, one of the things that we faced was sometimes having incredible bags of fruits and vegetables, but people not knowing what to do with them. So wondering if you faced that, and if you have, what kinds of solutions you've come up with around kind of inspiring people to want what you're growing. Or maybe that's not an issue. I'm just curious what your experience is with that.
I would say a lot of times having a food dish cooking demonstrations helps.
Yeah.
And and especially cooking demonstrations of the food that they're receiving. And at Green Guerrillas, we partner with community gardens that have a farm stand or farmers market, and we will provide them with a chef that would do those demonstrations. And the role of the chef is to speak to the market manager and to prep a menu ahead of time, and so that the produce that they're cooking are produce that are accessible at the farmers markets and also seasonal as well. And it's interesting to see how people's mind will change a lot, because if you're not used to eating fresh produce that are locally grown or produce that are new to you, having a cooking demonstration helps a lot. And you see a lot of people will want to try it themselves. This summer, some of my youth interns, they did an herbalism workshop. So they went to the Bronx River Food Alliance group and they led a workshop for them. And they used mulberry for the first time, and they had to go and forage it for themselves and make a tincture out of it, syrup out of it, and like some form of like juice, like iced tea. And they loved it. And they even took some back home with them so that they could try it themselves. And that was nice to see, because our youth could be picky at times, and being able to see their excitement and for them to try it themselves, that was pretty cool.
Thank you so much. Can you do you mind putting your email in the chat if I want to reach out? That'd be amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, what Iyeshima said, we definitely do food demonstrations at our farmers market, and for anyone that attends, you get health bucks to later buy the produce and then try out the recipe yourself. And then we also hold workshops around cooking, like seasonally as well. We also find that like a lot of the people in our community, like I'm learning a lot of recipes from them. So we try to grow like the culturally relevant, appropriate crops that they already know the recipes to. So yeah, it's a great exchange.
Great. Oh, Scott.
Yeah, hey, thanks everybody for this. This is really fascinating. I was curious, Alec, you mentioned the lack of grocery stores in East New York back in the 1990s, and it made me wonder how programs like yours, I don't know if Iyeshima has any thoughts about this as well. Is there any sort of correlation between what else happens in the food landscape in a neighborhood as programs like this come up? Is it putting pressure on local markets to provide different kinds of food? Are more places opening, shutting? How's the larger ecosystem changing around the work that you're doing?
Yes, our neighborhoods definitely dictate the form of programs we're producing and the type of food that's being grown. I could speak for East New York Farms because I worked there for 6 years. When I was working in East New York, the community is heavily populated with a lot of immigrants, family that are coming from the Caribbean, Latin America, southern part of America. And they definitely help to shape the form of food that we're growing. Even folks that are coming from like the Middle Eastern countries as well, they will particularly come and ask for kukuzi, and we have to start growing kukuzi because that's what they need and that's what they're asking for. And even if they have the space to grow it themselves, they could trust the quality of the produce because they could see it on the farm. And that's a unique thing about East New York Farms is they have markets where they're growing the food, so people could literally like go and harvest extra, or they could see the production of the food. Or for kukuzi in particular, like I didn't know that you could eat kukuzi leaf, and someone literally just like went and started picking the vines off the leaf and made like a curry kukuzi leaf, and I'm like, what? This is interesting. I didn't know that. So they definitely dictate the forms of programs that we're producing. And I think the cool thing about a lot of food justice organizations is that they're able to pivot their programs based on what they're hearing. So for Green Guerrillas, because we service a lot of neighborhoods in New York City, we do a lot of surveys with our constituents, our community gardeners, and we ask them like, what do they need? And we try to figure out how we could raise funds to provide them what they need. So for example, one of the things that they've been talking about is seeds. A lot of the plants that they're receiving, or the seeds that they're receiving, we call it typical plants like kale, cucumbers, tomatoes. And we decided to have a seed library where people could get their cultural seeds. And we try to source that. And in turn, we're trying to create a seed from like seed exchange program, where as community gardeners are growing those seeds that we're distributing, they're also able to save the seeds and add it back to the seed library that we could redistribute to other community gardeners. And that's how our program have been like responsive in that way to the community.
Thank you. Thank you. I love that. Yeah, I love the way you describe that as, trying to provide people what they want and need and being responsive to changing needs. I also really appreciated that in Alec's presentation, tracing the history of the community in East New York and the history that this food system grows out of. What do you think? I mean, I know we've just been talking about history and it's impossible to predict the future, but what do you guys, Alec and Iyeshima, I mean, what do you see coming down the road in community gardens and community farming in New York? Do you have new programs that you're hoping to launch, or how do you see the future of your work? Given also climate change and the increasing pressures that we're facing on the food system, where are you guys going from here?
Big question.
Sorry, that's a very broad question. Please predict the future and tell me how you'll respond to it. But what are some things that you would like to do in the coming years, if you could?
Something that's always on my mind is to be able to provide like more economic opportunities for the community gardeners and farmers who are like stewarding this land. I think for it to be like mostly volunteer work. There's a lot of different kinds of gardens, like some are just for like a community gathering space or beautification, but others are to produce food to like to feed themselves and to sell. But yeah, I just don't want there to be like unpaid labor going on in our communities. And so there's this, in the next year or so, we're trying to create like a food hub in East New York, which would kind of like centralize all of the produce and food that's being grown, and to be able to kind of connect it to the different grocery stores, bodegas, or restaurants to buy directly from the community. Like there's this a restaurant on the corner. They sold like a bitter melon dish, and we grow a lot of bitter melon. And I tried it, and it was really good. And I was like, oh, you guys know that we like grow it? Like you can just come like buy some from the market. So just trying to have the food travel less distance, and to have it be more sustainable and closed in the community.
Yeah. I love from your presentation earlier, this, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the name of the program, but where people who maybe just grow a little bit on their own and can't have their own, sustain their own stand at the farmer's market, they can bring you the food and, take home 90% of the profit from that. I mean, that's just a great way, I think, of empowering anyone and everyone, even with like they could have a window box with, a couple of tomato plants and still be part of the food system. I think that's fantastic. Iyeshima, on your end, like what are you guys hoping to do or looking forward to in the future?
I would say advocacy is something that we're open to foster a lot more, because the way in which we were able to get like all these amazing agencies or nonprofit organization that helps to steward community gardens and preserve their spaces is through advocacy. And over time, a lot of community gardeners that I'm finding are not as active in advocacy, or they want to be, but don't know how to be. So my role going into next year is really to build out civic engagement in the community gardens sphere, so that community gardeners could advocate for themselves, could understand that in order for you to get a shovel You have to
Mm.
ask for it. You have to ask for funding. You have to talk to electeds to make sure that funding is being streamlined in the most appropriate way. So programs that are servicing them so that they can get what they need. So that's something that I'm looking into investing in and to create in the future.
It's frightening to think of it this way, but I suppose elected officials are part of the food system too, for better or worse. And you know, this is another impossibly broad question, but how do you define success in your work? Because I think we could have this like utopian image of a fully sustainable, like fully just, environmentally friendly and sustainable food system, but we're not likely to get there soon. I mean, we need to hold on to that image and be working towards it, but we're not going to arrive at that in the next few years. So what other, markers or milestones do you use to see the success of your work? Iyeshima, could I ask you?
Yeah.
Or yeah.
I would say people's enjoyment when they're receiving what they've asked for or their cultural food, I think is successful. Being able to have people like come to the farms or the markets and be like, I need Scotch bonnet pepper, and we're like, we have it. Or even learning the difference between like my culture, I'm Jamaican, so my culture called every hot pepper Scotch bonnet. When I was working at East New York Farms, I'm like, it's not Scotch bonnet, it's habanero. Like, having to correct the terms. So getting that experience and seeing how fulfilled and enjoyed people feel from receiving the food that they want. And also youth involvement, seeing how involved the youth are in our programs and how much they have grown personally. Like at some point, our youth internship programs are an extension of homes, like literally having to tell my youth, like, hey, that's not okay, or this is a proper way to do this. Helping them grow professionally and career-wise is also something that's what success looks like to me, and seeing where they are and who they become in the future is exciting. And their enthusiasm to return to our programs. Like I have youth that are now returning to our program for the 4th year, and we've never expected that, and it's happening. And youth that are now becoming staff on to our team is really great. And being able to support communities. A lot of community gardens, they host events. So even having to purchase materials for their events and helping them to bring enjoyment, fulfillment to their communities in various ways. That's what success looks like for us at Green Guerrillas.
Thank you. I love it. I mean, the smile on someone's face when they get a Scotch bonnet pepper grown around the corner, that's not like single-handedly gonna, save our world and our food system, but it's a wonderful step. Alec, any thoughts from you on, where you find success in your work? Let's look for the positive.
Yeah, I was gonna say everything that Iyeshima said. She nailed it. Definitely like the interpersonal relationships and the connections. Like we're growing food, but we're also growing like young people and community. Just being able to gather people together. Yeah, I think that's what success looks like. And it's to not get like bogged down by the constantly fighting and like moving against the current.
Right.
Is what keeps us going. Every day that our team shows up is a success.
Awesome. Carly, I see a hand going up.
Yes, I'm so impressed with both your programs, and I'm wondering whether you're up for helping people in other parts of the city emulate you and begin programs like that, because I think it needs to be spread, and you have models of great success. It's very impressive. And I think we need more of you in the rest of the city.
Thank you so much for saying that. I would say East New York Farms is the model for youth development programs across New York City. Their youth internship program started in 2000 actually. And East New York Farms was founded in like 1999, but they have like a whole manual of like how to develop, structure, and operate a youth program. And a lot of youth programs in New York City use their model to do that. So definitely when I say East New York Farms is like the the crown gem in youth development work. And coming from there too has allowed for me to even like push that further to create and design other youth programs. So definitely we will love to work with you in whichever ways that we can to implement that for sure across the city.
Yeah. Alec and Iyeshima, we only have about a minute left. I wonder if you guys could put your contact info in the chat. And then also I have been asked to share. Can everyone see my screen now? I have, social media handles and websites and contact info for Alec and Iyeshima. And it just says time is up for breakout rooms. So I think we have about a minute to go, but if folks want to jot down.
I can't do it, can't see it.
Oh, well, Carly, also feel free to reach out to the Interfaith Center, to Hanedi or Shanaz or myself, and we can connect you with any or all of the speakers from today's conference.
Terrific. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Of course. We have about 30 seconds, but so I'd say very briefly, just as a lifelong New Yorker, I just love seeing like the natural world thriving in, half an acre at a time in East New York and elsewhere. It's fantastic. So I really appreciate you guys reminding us that, food systems are happening in the big city as well. And your work to create food justice on that level. Thank you, guys.